So why is the abortion rate actually falling?
All right, well, finally we get to the good part of the year. Why is the abortion rate falling? The best explanation for the falling abortion rate is this. A higher percentage of unintended pregnancies are being carried to term. So it's not that unintended pregnancies aren't happening. It's when they do happen, women are a lot more likely to choose life. And we have this data from actually all places, Guttmacher. Guttmacher doesn't actually present this data in their analyses, but it's out there in their publications for people who are interested. So we saw that in 1981, almost 54% of unintended pregnancies were aborted. The most recent data in 2011 showed that number fell to 42%. So again, the early 80s, over half of unintended pregnancies were aborted. That number fell to about 42% by 2011. And there's some other research done by Professor Paul Sullins at CUA that shows in the past few years that number might even be lower, that we haven't released this data just yet, but there is a good chance that this trend is continuing. So I think that when I talk to pro-lifers, I mention this quite a bit, because if more and more unintended pregnancies are being carried to term, that means that things pro-lifers are doing are working. It's because the things pro-lifers are doing, they're getting abortion numbers down. If more unintended pregnancies are carried to term, that means we're either changing hearts and minds, or helping women through pregnancy help centers, or passing more protective laws. And again, I think you can make a case that all of those things in different combinations are contributing to the 53% decline in the abortion rate since 1980.
Before we go any further, Dr. New, for sort of the average person who isn't dealing with this type of data or this issue on a day-to-day basis, when we say the percentage of unintended pregnancies, how is that measured? Like, how do we have that information, and like what counts as an unintended pregnancy?
That's a good question. My understanding is Guttmacher looks at something called the National Survey of Family Growth. And that's a very big, broad-based study that asks probably thousands of people every few years about their family situation. And I think they do ask people about kind of their sexual activity and pregnancies. And they do ask, was this pregnancy intended? Was it mistimed? Meaning that you wanted to have a child, but maybe the woman conceived earlier than she wanted, or was it unintended? So they do actually ask surveys about this in the National Survey of Family Growth. This is widely used by family studies scholars and other social scientists, and I think is a pretty reliable data set for this kind of research.
And so the two kind of questions that are important to us, right, is like the first one that people are being asked and answering is, was the pregnancy unintended or intended? And the second is, was it aborted or carried to term, right? And what you're saying is that the level of unintended pregnancy has stayed the same, but the people choosing to abort has gone down and choosing to carry to term has gone up, right?
Right. I mean, we have seen some slight declines in the unintended pregnancy rate, but overall we've seen a lot of fluctuation there too. We don't see the steady decline in that unintended pregnancy rate that we do in the abortion rate, but we do see a pretty consistent trend in that a higher percentage of unintended pregnancies are being carried to term. We saw that from both their 2008 data and 2011 data. I think if we ever get more recent data, we'll see that trend's going to continue. Again, I think that's a very important trend, one that pro-lifers should spend more time talking about.
So you say one of the biggest reasons why the rate is falling is because of pro-life laws. Which ones in your study have been most effective in lowering the abortion rate?
I'd say definitely the most effective laws are public funding limits. And these are laws that limit the ability of state Medicaid programs to pay for abortions for women on Medicaid. That the federal level, we have the Hyde Amendment, which limits the ability of the federal government to use taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions, but states can adopt their own policies. And unfortunately, about 17 states right now have policies in place that cover abortion for women on Medicaid. And over time, some states have changed their policies. We can also draw comparisons between states that do fund abortion through Medicaid and states that don't. And there's a pretty strong consensus that if you cut off taxpayer funding for abortion through state Medicaid programs, abortion rates fall anywhere from about 5 to 10%. Many studies show that. Guttmacher did a literature review back in 2009. Again, they tend to downplay the impact of pro-life laws, but in this case, the evidence was so overwhelming, they admitted that cutting off taxpayer funding for abortion does get abortion numbers down. I've also done work on the Hyde Amendment. I mean, the Hyde Amendment was one of the first kind of big pro-life policy initiatives. After Roe v. Wade, we couldn't necessarily reverse this in the short term, but we could try to protect conscience rights, and we could try to protect taxpayers. So what Henry Hyde did is he put a rider in the annual HHS appropriations bill that limited the ability of the federal government to use federal taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions. And after some legal back and forth, this is upheld by the Supreme Court in Harris v. McRae in 1980. This is actually a case that AUL helped litigate some 39 years ago. And almost everyone agrees the Hyde Amendment has definitely stopped some abortions and saved lives. The Center for Reproductive Rights, they did an analysis back in 2010, and they found the Hyde Amendment stopped over 1 million abortions. My analysis for Lozier in 2016 found the Hyde Amendment had stopped over 2 million. So there's a very broad consensus amongst both pro-life and pro-choice researchers that the Hyde Amendment has saved, billions of lives and, is really effective at getting abortion numbers down.